What? Let's go! Woo! No way. Let's freaking go. Well, I passed, and I got a... What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of MedVice. Before we jump into today's topic, I just wanted to say one thing. I was looking at my USMLE Step 2 CS video, and it looks like over 98, almost 99% of you guys that watch that video are not currently subscribed. So right now, if you've ever seen one of my videos and you liked it, or if you end up liking this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. It may not be a big deal to you, but it helps me out a whole lot. So thank you for that. Okay, now back to the topic of today's video. If you saw my most recent video, I just took Step 2 CK about 2 weeks ago, and I already got my score back. Usually it takes about 3 weeks to get them back, but it seems like maybe with the pandemic, there's less people taking the test and they were able to get them out quicker. I'll come out and say right now, I'm very happy with my score. My goal was to just improve on my Step 1 score, and I certainly did that. So I have the score that I want that's going to help me out in the process of applying to residency, and now I'm done with USMLE exams until I graduate, which is a big relief. First piece of information I have for you, and something that you can do months in advance of your exam, is to really pay attention during your third year rotations and take those shelf exams seriously. When studying for a big final test like Step 2, it's a culmination of all of the information that you're supposed to learn on your rotations and you're tested on during those shelf exams. So if you really put in the work and you pay attention to the doctors and residents you're working with, and you study your butt off for those shelf exams, it's going to be much easier later on when you're taking Step 2 and studying for it to review that information rather than trying to learn it for the first time and catching up from what you missed out on previously. The next major thing is something you can do maybe a couple weeks in advance of when your dedicated time is going to be, and that is to really look at your schedule and your timeline. Usually students get a lot less time to study for Step 2 than they do Step 1, so you got to be a little bit more picky with your resources. You certainly don't need to go out and get 4 or 5 things, because you may just not have time for them. If you only have 4 weeks to study for Step 2, you're not going to be able to get through all of UWorld and all of AMBOSS and all of Boards and Beyond, so you really need to be selective with those. There really isn't a whole lot of studying that goes into prepping for Step 2. It's more like reviewing, because you already learned all that information mostly in your rotations, and it's not like Step 1 where you were memorizing basic science facts and you needed to read the books. Most of the stuff you get from your rotations and studying from your shelf exams with practice questions. Which brings me into my third thing that I wanted to talk about, and that is to do absolutely as many practice questions as you possibly can. I don't recommend getting more than one Q bank. If you have either UWorld or AMBOSS, both of those will work fine. I had both because I bought AMBOSS for Step 1 and my membership was continuing on, but either of those should be just fine. The more you can do, the better you'll be prepared, and if you've already finished the Q bank, do them again, because obviously there's going to be some that you missed. This is going to be the main way that you study for Step 2. Another thing that I did that I found helpful, and that I talk to my friends when they ask me for advice about how to study for any major exam like Step 1 or Step 2, is to create a document of all of the little factoids and things that you would have needed to know to get questions right that you previously missed. So for example, if I'm doing a UWorld block and I finish it up and I realized I missed several questions, I will go to that explanation, and I have on this document on my computer a big compilation of all of the little bullet points, the little factoids that I would have needed to know to get that question right. And then I usually will review that whole document every few days or so. And obviously, as you do more practice questions and you miss more, that document becomes longer and longer. But it's a good way to really review those key points that you missed and just memorize the few factoids or things that you didn't pick up on when you were in your rotations and when you were studying. As you can see here with the document that I created, I have my rotations organized so that I can keep all of the information in their respective category. But it ended up being a lot of information. I missed a lot of questions when I was practicing and when I was studying. But all of these are the little tidbits of information that I would have needed to get those questions right. And by the end, it ended up being 22 pages of information. But these little things really helped me out when I was studying and for the exam. Another piece of information, something that I think is important, is to always make sure you have a little bit of extra time to review those specific things that you found more challenging. If you aced peds and internal medicine, but you really struggle with OB-GYN, take a little extra time, whether it's at the end of the day, an extra 20 questions at the end of the day for OB-GYN, or an extra day, an entire day per week for that specific thing, because you want to make sure that you're focusing on the things that you struggle with most. And the last piece of information, obviously this is a stressful test, there's a lot of anxiety, but going into it, trust your practice scores. I know everybody feels bad coming out of it, but if you've taken the NBMEs and the UWorld self-assessments, they usually provide a range, and usually those are pretty close. So for my NBMEs, I think they predicted for me a 255 to a 265. The UWorld self-assessments usually over-predict just a little bit, so I think they were pegging me around a 260 to a 270. And on the real thing, I ended up getting a 262, which for me, I'm very happy with. I think that's a great score for me. It's going to do what it needs to do for my residency application. Those last few days when the anxiety is the highest, just trust those practice test scores, go in with confidence, and you're going to crush it. This last thing isn't for the exam itself, but no matter what happens at the end of it, make sure you go out and enjoy yourself, reward yourself. I know it's hard right now with the pandemic. I didn't really get to spend a whole lot of time with my friends, but I did go home and spend some time with my family and my girlfriend. But no matter what you end up doing, just enjoy yourself. You just got past step 2, and now with CS being canceled, that's your last boards exam until graduation. So make sure you go out and enjoy being done with it all. But that's all I had for you guys. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Med Advice, and as always, I'll see you next time.